in the tangled, chaotic heart of Karachi lies Liari, a neighborhood pulsing with life, resilience, and a history stained with blood. For decades, this place was the epicenter of a brutal gang war, and at its center stood a figure as complex as the streets that raised him. Rehman Dakait. Was he a cold-blooded killer, a ruthless crime lord, or was he a Robin Hood, a protector of the poor, a folk hero born from desperation? Tonight, we unravel the myth and the man, exploring the story of how a boy from Liari became one of the most feared and revered names in Pakistan's underworld. Born Abdul Rehman Balok, his journey began in a world where survival was a daily struggle. The Liari of the 1980s was a pressure cooker of poverty, political turmoil, and simmering ethnic tensions. For a young boy growing up in these narrow, labyrinthine alleys, violence wasn't just on the news, it was the air he breathed. Gangs weren't just criminal enterprises. They were social structures, a source of power, and for many, the only path to a life beyond crushing poverty. Rehman, like many of his peers, was drawn into this world early on. He started as a small-time member of a local street gang, but it didn't take long for people to notice him. He was different. He was fearless, fiercely loyal to his community, and possessed a sharp, strategic mind that set him apart. As he rose through the ranks, his reputation grew. He wasn't just a thug, he was a leader. He understood the intricate power dynamics of Liari, navigating the treacherous waters of crime and politics with an uncanny skill. He consolidated his power, absorbing smaller groups and forging alliances, until he stood at the helm of a formidable criminal empire. His influence stretched far beyond the confines of Liari, reaching into the very fabric of Karachi's economy. The police and the state saw him as public enemy number one. The official records paint a grim picture. A man responsible for a litany of crimes, including extortion, kidnapping for ransom, and countless targeted killings. For the authorities, he was a cancer in the city, a symbol of lawlessness that needed to be eradicated. But on the streets of Liari, a very different story was being told. For thousands of residents, Rehman Dakait was not a villain. He was a savior. They called him Serdar, a title of respect. They saw him as the one who stood up for them when no one else would. Stories circulated of his generosity, how he would fund weddings for families who couldn't afford them, pay for medical bills, and distribute food during hard times. He was a major patron of Liari's famous football clubs, nurturing local talent and giving the youth a sense of purpose. In a community that felt abandoned by the state, Rehman provided a form of rough, street-level justice. He kept rival gangs from terrorizing the local population and maintained a semblance of order where the police could not, or would not, tread. This duality is what makes his story so fascinating. How could a man be a feared gangster and a beloved benefactor at the same time? The answer lies in the deep-seated loyalty and a shared sense of identity. The people of Liari didn't see him as an outsider imposing his will. They saw him as one of their own who had made it. They protected him, shielded him from the authorities, and made him virtually untouchable. Police raids would be met with resistance, not from his gang members, but from ordinary residents, women, and even children who would flood the streets to block their path. He was their defender, and they were his fortress. This Robin Hood persona wasn't just a myth. It was a carefully cultivated image that became his greatest weapon and his most enduring legacy. The early 2000s marked the bloodiest chapter in Liari's history. The infamous Liari gang war erupted, pitting Rehman Dakait against his arch-rival, Ashad Papu. The conflict was brutal and personal, rooted in a cycle of revenge that had spanned generations. The streets became a war zone. The sound of gunfire was a daily reality, and the body count climbed relentlessly. The rivalry wasn't just about territory or criminal rackets. It was a deeply personal vendetta that tore families and the community apart. This escalating violence put immense pressure on the government to act. The state, which had often turned a blind eye, or even used the gangs for its own political ends, could no longer ignore the chaos. Rehman was forced deeper into the shadows, becoming a phantom who commanded his operations from hiding. The police launched massive operations, trying to corner him, but his network of informants and the loyalty of the community always kept him one step ahead. He was a ghost, slipping through their grasp time and time again. The government grew increasingly desperate. Rehman's power and popularity were a direct challenge to their authority. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a symbol of the state's failure. They needed to make an example of him. Then came the night of August 9th, 2009. The official report from the police was simple and direct. They had located Rehman Dakait and a key associate in a car near Marine Drive. A fierce gun battle ensued, and in the end, Rehman was killed. The reign of Liari's most powerful crime lord was over, but from the moment the news broke, whispers and doubts began to spread. An encounter. Many people in Liari and beyond didn't buy it. The circumstances seemed too convenient. The story too clean. Rumors swirled that he had been arrested days earlier, tortured, and then his death was staged to look like a shootout. To this day, many believe his killing was a state-sanctioned extrajudicial execution, a political decision to eliminate a figure who had become too powerful and inconvenient. Rehman Dakait's death sent shockwaves through Karachi. In Liari, the reaction was deeply divided. Some celebrated, breathing a sigh of relief that the era of constant violence might finally be over. They mourned the countless lives lost in the gang wars and hoped for a future of peace. But for many others, it was a day of mourning. They had lost their Sardar, their protector. His funeral was a massive event, attended by thousands who wept openly for the man they considered a hero. This division captures the essence of his legacy, a figure who inspired both terror and devotion, a villain to some and a martyr to others. Years after his death, the name Rehman Dakait still echoes through the streets of Liari. His story has become a modern legend, a cautionary tale about the blurred lines between right and wrong, crime and justice, hero and villain. He remains a powerful symbol of how systemic neglect, poverty, and a search for identity can forge a leader out of the most unlikely circumstances. His life and death are a mirror reflecting the complex, often contradictory, soul of Karachi itself. Was he a product of his environment, or did he create the environment around him? Perhaps the truth is that he was both. A boy from the streets who rose to become a king, whose ghost still looms large over the city he once ruled. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of Karachi's most enigmatic figures. If you found this story compelling, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories from around the world, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? Was Rehman Dakait a hero or a villain? Let's continue the conversation. Thanks for watching.